everyone. I am CA Preeti Agarwal and welcome to the first lecture of the General Clauses Act 1897. Now, before I begin with the provisions of this act, let us first understand our approach because I feel that once you are very clear on how to take up a particular chapter, then it becomes very easy for you to understand, learn, and recall the provisions before exam. Now, our approach is going to be very different as far as the General Clauses Act is concerned. We are going to discuss most of the sections with the help of my handwritten notes. So, what I am going to do is, I will first be giving you handwritten notes, something like this, okay? I will give you my handwritten charts, notes, etc. And yes, I have this ready for all the sections, okay? So first we are going to discuss everything through my handwritten notes because it becomes very easy when we actually read it from the textbook. Now what you will do is first you will understand the note with me. Don't be in a hurry to write everything. See, I know your main aim is to complete your notebook, but I feel that if you understand and write, it will be more effective than just copying without understanding. Okay. So what you will do is first you will only quietly listen to my explanation. Then I will give you time to write, to pause the video, to write all this in your notebook. Once we have discussed this, once you have written whatever was required, then we will read all this from the textbook. Okay. So only after we complete all that, then we will proceed to the next topic. Okay. So the entire chapter and this I'm going to follow for each part of this chapter. I have divided this particular act into various parts. I'm not discussing everything together. Okay. So maybe 45 minutes to 1 hour we will discuss a particular part. In that we may have various sections. So once that is over, then we will take a break. I don't want to make the video very lengthy because then it becomes very dry and boring. Okay, so this is going to be our approach. We are going to first understand this through my handwritten notes, and only after that you will write it, and then we will read all this from the notes, okay, from my printed notes. So this is how I have prepared notes for the entire chapter. Okay, so let's get started. And what I will need from you is a notebook, pen, highlighter, and a red pen or some other color pen. Okay, so that you can highlight a few things, write certain things in red, so that it is highlighted, and you can recall those keywords before in your exam. So this is going to be our approach. Try and write, and don't just take a photograph and keep it in your mobile. You will end up not studying it only. Okay, so take the effort, take some time, write all this in your notebook. Okay, so let's get started with the General Clauses Act 1897. Before we discuss what is general, what is a clause, do you know the importance of a definition? Yeah, ma'am, we have studied definition. In fact, you have been studying definitions since so many years now. In your school, college, even in your professional exams, you have studied definition. Have you ever wondered what is the basic purpose of a definition? Ma'am, why are you discussing about a definition in the beginning of this chapter? This entire chapter is based on that. Just give me some time. Have you ever wondered what is the purpose of a definition? Now imagine reading the word director in the Companies Act. See, a person who's reading the Companies Act for the first time, he will wonder what is the meaning of a director? Okay, so law says that it is better to explain the meaning of a director whenever you use it. Now, the word director is used, I think, 1,000 times in the Companies Act. Imagine whenever the word is used, below that they have written this. This is the meaning of the word director. There will be so much of repetition, and the act will become so bulky. So, what we do is, whenever these unique words are used in the act, instead of explaining it again and again wherever it is used, we put all those words at one place, we define all those words at one place and put it in a section. Like in most of the acts, section 2 or section 3, okay, if not section 2, then section 3 will cover the meaning of these words. So what happens is all the unique words, they are defined in one section at one place. It also means that wherever that word is used in the act, it will have the same meaning. Okay, so wherever the word director is used, the meaning will be one which is given in section 2. So that is the main purpose of definition. So put everything at one place in order to avoid repetition, in order to, avoid making the act very bulky. We have defined those unique terms in one place. So let me write the importance of a definition. So the importance of defining word is it avoids repetition. All words are defined at one place. And it also brings about a uniformity. See, when a word is defined, wherever you read it in the act, it will have the same meaning. So it brings about a lot of uniformity. Also, practically, if you see, these laws are made by a lawmaker. So whenever the lawmaker wrote these laws, wrote these acts, he must have attached some meaning to that word. Now, if I am the lawmaker, okay, and I use the word director many times in the act, but I don't define it. So each and every person who is referring the act will have a different meaning of director. See, director may be a movie director. So if you read the definition, it says in relation to a company. Okay, in case of a company, this is the meaning of a director, because director can be someone who directs a play, who directs a movie, someone who directs the company. So what are you exactly trying to say? So in the definition itself, they have mentioned that with reference to a company, this is the meaning of a director. With reference to a company, this is the meaning of a board of directors. So if the lawmaker does not define these words, various people reading the act will attach their own meaning to these words, and that is not what we want. See, you and I are two different persons, okay, and the meaning that you will attach to a word will be different from the meaning that I attach to the word based on our experiences. So two persons reading the same text, reading the same act, may assign a different meaning to the word director. So we tell the lawmaker that instead of you leaving it to the understanding of the reader, why don't you define what you had in mind while making the act, so that it becomes so easy for people to understand? And this also brings about uniformity. Each person reading the act will attach the same meaning to that word. This also brings about uniformity. Okay, so it avoids different interpretation of the same word by different persons. The lawmakers are humans, and we humans are mortal. Okay, everybody will go away one or the other day. These laws are so very old. They were made by a lawmaker who may not even be alive right now. In case we have some query, Are, what is the meaning of this word? It is nowhere mentioned in the act. Will that lawmaker be available to clarify our doubts? No. So, by defining the word, he is allowing the future users to attach a particular meaning to that word. Yes. So, even if the lawmaker changes, or even if so, the lawmakers won't be available to clarify the meaning of the words later. Hence, it is important to define the word. Oh my god, we never ever thought of the importance of definition in this manner. We always thought that definition, because the word is defined, it is important for exam, we need to write it. but we never understood the importance of definition from the lawmaker's point of view. And this is the importance of definition. So it avoids repetition. All the words are defined at one place, so you know where to search. It brings about uniformity in understanding. This will make it more specific, brings about uniformity in understanding. It avoids different interpretation of the same word by different people, because if whoever is reading the text will attach his own interpretation. We want to avoid that, so that is why it is better to define. Lawmakers won't be available to clarify our doubts later, so it is better to define. Now, this is the importance of definition. Let us move one step ahead. Yes, how are these? You, if you want, you can pause the video anytime. Students, you can pause the video anytime and copy all this in your notebook. I would encourage you to write each and everything that I cover in class, because this will help you a lot during revision. Okay, so please write all this in your notebook. Okay, now, how are these definitions written? So let's say, for example, consider the definition in section 2. So we have a small a, then we have section 2b, section 2c. Now, this is something which everybody will remember. Offer in Contract Act is defined under section 2a. Acceptance is defined under section 2b. Promisor and promisee are defined in section 2 clause c. Yes. Now, an act is first divided into chapters. Chapters are then divided into sections. Sections may be either further divided into subsections or clauses. Okay, so we have section 2, clause A, section 2, clause B. Ma'am, but after a section, we have subsection. Na? How did you go directly to a clause? Now, let's say that you have written something like this, section 10, 1A, and a small one. Now, what does it mean? It means that this is related to the main section. Okay, so this is section. This is subsection. This is a clause, and this is a subclause. Now, if I have written a section and there is one point which is connected to the section heading. Okay, so every section has a heading. If it is connected to the section heading, then you write subsection, because subsection is a part of the main section. If you want to explain something in the subsection, then add a clause. If you want to explain something in a clause, add a subclause. See, how do we write answer in the examination? So we write in the margin question 10, then we write 1, and then we start explaining. Yes, we write the first point. Then in that, if I want to explain something, so I write small 1, small 2. Then when I go to a new point, I write B. Okay, then I go to a new sub question. So this is how we write in the exam. This is a part of the previous one. This is a part of this. Yes. So in the sections also, if you want to write something which is connected to the section, then you introduce a subsection. Ma'am, I don't have anything of that sort. I want to start with something independent. I want to start with something which is not at all connected to the section heading. Then you directly jump to clause. There are various ways in which we can find out whether the section is followed by a subsection or a clause. That is not our area of discussion right now. So directly you jump to clause. Now, clause is used whenever you want to explain a new concept or a new point. In case of a definition, each definition is unique. It is not connected to the section heading. Each definition is unique. That is why after section, instead of using subsection, we directly jump to clause. We directly jump to clause. Each definition is different. That is why we use clause. This is not connected to the previous one. That is why we use clause and not subsection. So in definition, especially, section 2 is always followed by a clause. Clause means it is definition, right? It's unique, right? It's unique. Now, connect all this knowledge to the chapter heading now. What is the meaning of clause? See, please note, students, clause may be present in sections other than definition also. Okay, I have clauses in other sections also, they are not definitional sections. To give you an example, that section 2 clause C, this is what we have always studied. The word clause indicates that it is a definition. It indicates over here in this context now. And these are different definitions, okay? They're not connected to each other. But are they words which are very specific to an act? No, no, no. See, the word director is a very specific word. The Companies Act will definitely explain and define these unique terms which are specific to that act. But what if there are certain terms which are used in various acts? Like, say, for example, you must have read that the Contract Act, okay, this is our favorite act. The Contract Act commenced on 1st September 1872. Now, what is the meaning of the word commenced? It means it began, it came into force. Now, these are such general meanings. Acha, what about the contracts which were entered before 1st September 1872? Contract Act is not applicable. I have some doubt. Commencement, what does commencement mean? Does it mean that it will now apply only to contracts after 1st September? Or does it mean that because it has now come into force, all kinds of contracts, whether entered before 1st September or after, will be covered by this act? There is some confusion. We tried to find the meaning of the word commenced in the Contract Act, but it is not defined only. It's not defined. What should we do? As chartered accountants, can you tell your client, sorry, the definition of commencement is not given. Now, he came with a query that his grandfather had obtained a building on lease for like 100 years or 150 years or something like that. Now, the contract for that lease was entered on 1st of August 1870. That time, there was no Contract Act. So now what should we do? Is the Contract Act applicable to that lease or is it not applicable? So you try to find out the meaning of commencement in the Contract Act, but that word is not explained only. Can you tell the client, Arey, what stupid query you have come up with? You should have asked something related to accounts or company. Things are not properly defined in Contract Act. Can we say something like this to the client? That client will never come to us for any opinion then. So what we do is we try to find out the meaning of those general terms in at some place, and that some place is nothing but the General Clauses Act. It tries to explain the words which are of general use, which are generally used in various acts. Ma'am, why not define all this in the respective act itself? Like, why not define the word commencement in Contract Act? But my dear student, the word commencement is so commonly used. In fact, it is used in all the acts because we would like to know when the act commenced, na? When it came into force. So that is one word which is used everywhere. Now imagine defining each and every word in the act itself. You know, Companies Act has 99 definitions, in fact more than 99. So imagine adding 20 more. You will stop studying. You will say, I don't want to study these definitions, there are so many of them. Act becomes very bulky. So instead of repeating the definition, because the commencement definition will remain the same, so instead of writing it in every act, we say leave it. These general terms will be defined in the General Clauses Act 1897. So if you are not able to find the specific meaning of that specific word in the act, come over here, you may find something here. Acha, at many places in the Companies Act, I'm very sure you must have read the word government. What is the meaning of this government? Does it mean central government or state government? You have just seen the word government written over there. Does it mean central government or does it mean state government? Nothing is mentioned. There is confusion. There is some confusion. I tried to find out in the Companies Act, but I don't know. I couldn't find it out. Come here, come here. Come to the General Clauses Act. They have explained what is the meaning of the word government. See, these are such small doubts, but aren't they relevant? We would like to know whether you are referring to the central government or state government. It is so very logical. See, students, you don't have to come to the General Clauses Act whenever you are facing some doubt. What is step number one? Step 1. Law says, first try to find out the meaning of that word in the act itself. Okay? So try finding the meaning of the term, or you can say word, in the respective act. First, try and find the meaning in that respective act. On failure to find, then refer the General Clauses Act. So, first you try and find the meaning in that respective act itself. 99% all the unique words will be defined in that act. Ma'am, we tried. We went through the definition 3 to 4 times. That word is not defined. So, for those generally used words, come and search in the General Clauses Act. If you're lucky, you may find, ma'am, you're saying if you're lucky, it means that those general terms are not defined here also. My dear students, there are so many words in English. We can't define each one. There are so many legal terms also. We cannot define each and every general term over here. Ma'am, see, we searched that respective act. We didn't find that word. Then, as you said, we referred the General Clauses Act. There also the word is not defined. Then what should we? Then please go and find it in the dictionary. You are modern age students. You don't refer the physical dictionary. You know, we at my time had Webster dictionary. We all had one dictionary physical copy. That time we didn't have Google and all to help us. Oh my God, making this makes me feel so old suddenly. So my when I was very small, that time we didn't have Google, and we had to search meaning in that dictionary itself. Oxford dictionary, we all had a dictionary, small pocket dictionary, big dictionary, exhaustive dictionary. We had everything at home. So then go find it or Google it, then you will find the meaning over there. So not everything is defined even in the General Clauses Act, but yeah, wherever we feel that you may get stuck, you know, this is a very technical legal term, then we try to define it in the General Clauses Act. So, what is the meaning and what is the importance of the General Clauses Act? The General Clauses Act tries to provide the definition of generally, commonly used words in various acts. You will find that word in many, many, many acts. And we have tried to define it over here. Acha, what about good faith? Have you ever come across the term good faith? Arey, ma'am, so many times we have come across the word good faith. What is the meaning of good faith? Ma'am, which act are you referring to? Sale of Goods Act. Chalo, let's see. In Sale of Goods Act, you must have studied the word good faith n number of times. Is it defined in the Sale of Goods Act? Let us just check, ma'am. No, it is not defined in the Sale of Goods Act, but it is used so many times. Good faith. So, what should we do? Step 1. Try finding the meaning of that word in the respective act. You didn't find, na? Come here. General Clauses Act will explain the meaning of that word. Then search the General Clauses Act, TGCA. You will find the word. Wait a minute, wait a minute. We are studying the Partnership Act. Ma'am, Partnership Act defines good faith. Section 33 expulsion we had studied. If it is defining good faith, your work is done. If the act itself is defining it, if you find it in the respective act, you don't need to refer the General Clauses Act. So first try to find the meaning of that word in the respective act itself. Whichever act you're studying, that act will define the word. If it doesn't, then come to the General Clauses Act. We will try to define it. So what is the importance of the General Clauses? Okay, let us go through the importance, the objective. Have you now written all this? Just check, just check. All this will not come in your exam, but then because we have studied this, it will help you to recall the concept. Yes, you have mentioned everything correctly. Okay. So what is the objective of the act? Commonly used words are defined here in the General Clauses Act. Commonly used words are defined here. What about specific? That you will find in the act now. Again and again, we need not study that. It avoids repetition. And that is the main use of definition. It avoids repetition. Yes. So instead of, explaining the word again and again and again in the same act, or explaining one word and using it in various acts and then again and again, which one is better? Explaining it just at one place. You will all come here and refer the General Clauses Act. All definitions are at one place. It brings about uniformity. Every person reading the act will attach the same meaning to that word. Now, one lawmaker changes, the other lawmaker comes in his place. Everyone will give the same meaning to that word because it was defined. Otherwise, every lawmaker also will have a different interpretation. I want to make amendment. I can make an amendment only when I have the original definition. So there is a lot of use of these definitions. So this is the objective. You can pause the video and write this. Done. Okay. The General Clauses Act intends to provide general definitions. These are not specific words. Specific words will be defined in the respective act itself. Respective means what, ma'am? If you're studying the Sale of Goods Act, go through the Sale of Goods Act. Try to find that word. That is a respective act, no? If there is a question on Partnership Act, then I will refer the provisions of the Partnership Act, no? That is my respective act. I will try to find the meaning in that act. If I am referring the Gratuity Act, I will try to find the meaning of that word in the gratuity. That is a respective act. If I don't, then I will come here. This act intends to provide general definitions for all the central acts and regulation where there is no definition in that act or regulation. So my steps are going to remain the same. Step 1, I write and practice so that it fits in my mind. This act is something, this is one of the acts which is very difficult to remember. It is very difficult to memorize. That is why I'm taking all this effort of making handwritten notes, repeating the points, and making you write those same things again and again so that it is memorized in the class itself. You don't have to put in extra effort later. Step 1, try to find definition in respective act. On failure, refer the General Clauses Act. This act intends to provide the general definition for all central acts and regulation. Ma'am, what is the meaning of central act? See, we have state act and central act. Central act means an act which applies to the whole of India, like your GST, your Income Tax Act, your Contract Act, General Clauses Act. These are all central acts. We also have state acts. Are you aware that Shop and Establishment Act is a state act? Stamp Act is a state act. In fact, we also have the State General Clauses Act. Oh my God. See, it is very logical. For the state acts, you need the State General Clauses Act. For the central acts, you need the Central General Clauses Act. Isn't it? The words which are used in the state acts, if they are not defined in that act, you will refer the State General Clauses Act. Yes or no? It's so very logical. So what are we studying? We are studying the General Clauses Act, which applies to the central acts. We are studying those words which are not defined in the central act. Central act means an act which applies to the whole of India. This act has also been enacted to shorten the language of law and to avoid repetition. Wait, we will first understand how will this act shorten the language of law. Very good example given to you to explain that point. Whenever law provides that court will have the power to either appoint, suspend, or remove a receiver, the General Clauses Act says it is so logical. The person who has the power to appoint, that same person will also have the power to suspend and remove, na? It is understood that if I can appoint, I can remove also, I can suspend also. Why write and waste our time? Why make the act bulky? Remove it. If you have the power to appoint, then it is understood you also have the power to suspend or remove the receiver. It's understood, no? So in this case, how are we shortening the language of law? Just mention that wherever that the court will have the power. Okay, just write the court will have the power to appoint. We will assume that if you have the power to appoint, you also have the power to suspend or remove. The legislature means lawmaker, simply says that wherever convenient they may appoint the receiver. It is implied that if you have the right to appoint, you also have the right to remove and suspend. It is understood. You need to write it. So this, by just removing these two words, we are giving you an example of how we are shortening the language of law. It also avoids repetition. Yeah, instead of explaining the word again and again in every act, might as well explain it in the TGCA and ask everyone, Are, you are facing problem in these acts. Come here. I'll explain the meaning. So every reader of various acts will find the meaning of commencement, government, good faith, affidavit in this act. It avoids repetition of that same word in every act. The General Clauses Act was enacted on 11th March 1897 to consolidate and to extend the General Clauses Act of 1868 and 1887. So we are going to consolidate these and extend. So that is the purpose of 1897 Act. What is the object, the purpose and importance of the act can be asked as a theory question for 4 marks. Object: to shorten the language of law. Just discussed. Instead of writing appoint, suspend, remove, simply write appoint. It is understood. It provides uniformity of expression by giving the definition of common use. So these are commonly used words. If they are defined over here, each lawmaker, each reader of any act will have the same meaning for that word. Yes. So Acha, I think you may be curious. I did not discuss. You may be curious to know, ma'am, could you please tell us what about the contracts which are entered before 1st September 1872? What act applies? Because the Companies Act, the Contract Act came into force on 1st September. It applies to only those contracts which are entered after 1st of September. So what about the contracts which are entered before 1st September? The English law applies to those contracts because that time we had Britishers. Yes. So the English law applies to the contracts which are entered before 1st September 1872. Just for your knowledge, I thought you may be curious to know. So commencement means it starts from that date. It has a prospective effect. Okay, so we are trying to provide uniformity. Every person who is reading the word comments will have the same meaning which we are giving. So every person will attach the same meaning to that word used anywhere in whichever act that they are referring to. It states the rule for construction and interpretation. Ma'am, what is this? We are going to study this later in the interpretation of statutes. Interpretation of statutes is not an act, it's a guideline. Now, interpretation means reading the text and trying to understand it as it is without applying our brain. Just apply grammatical knowledge. You read the sentence and try to understand the sentence as it is. If it is giving you a very logical answer, problem solved. But if it is looking absurd, I don't think this was the intention of the lawmaker. Then try to apply logic, apply facts of the case, circumstances. Whenever you apply logic, whenever you feel that this may not be the intention of the lawmaker, then what you're doing is construction. We're going to discuss all this later also in construction. It states the common form clauses which apply to every central act. We are not defining the specific words. Those specific words are defined in the act itself. We are defining those generally. Okay, common form of contracts, the general form of contracts. And I don't think I need to repeat all this again and again because the same points are being explained in different forms. So these are common form clauses which shall apply to every central act. Okay. Do you want to write this? Although it will be given in your textbook, but I always feel that writing is a direct connection to your brain, which when you write and you write after understanding, it is automatically registered. So I think you should do that. I think you should do that. So please copy all this. Just pause the video and you can copy this. Done. All right. Very good. The purpose of the act. What is the purpose of the act? To place in one single statute, to place at just one place, different provisions regarding interpretation of words, legal principles. Ma'am, are we only going to study the definitions over here? No, that's not the case. We are also going to study certain legal principles, rules, provisions, etc. Okay, so yes, we are not only just going to understand the definition, but various rules also. Those rules will help us to understand the act. These words and legal principles, however, have to be read in context of every statute to which it applies. Now, whenever we read something, always keep the context in mind. See, when you're reading the Contract Act, keep contract in mind. When you read the Sale of Goods Act, although it is a contract of sale, but you also need to add the knowledge of Sale of Goods Act over there. Okay. If we are reading the Hindu Marriage Act, then keep that context in mind while reading the definition. So law is very clear that whenever you read the definition, keep the context in mind. These words, these legal principles have to be read in the context of the statute of the law that you are reading. It gives clarification when one word has different meanings in different acts. See, every act will define the word depending on the context of the act. So if there are different words, different meanings, if there is some confusion, that confusion will be cleared through the General Clauses Act, and slowly you will understand how. So what is the purpose? It places in one single statute different provisions. It gives clarification when different words have different meanings in that. These general principles apply to all the central act. In fact, it is law of all the laws. I think it is the father of all laws. Whenever you have confusion, come here. See, like whenever you are in trouble, you go to your dad. No, we go to our mom. Dad will scold us. No, but there are certain things which even mom says, no, ask dad. So, and he is the ultimate person to take the decision. So this is like the father of all laws. You are stuck somewhere, like I will solve it. Okay. So it applies to all the central acts. So can I conclude from this that the General Clauses Act, which we are studying, applies to the central acts? We are studying the central General Clauses Act, which applies to the whole of India. There are also state General Clauses Act. Okay. So this is the importance. This is the important. Just copy all this. Done. These are, however, guidelines. They are not some mathematical formula. See, in maths, one formula applies to all the questions of that type. Yeah. But can you apply one rule to all situations? Like, say for example, we know that killing is illegal. But what if I kill in self-defense? Although that is not legal, but you won't be punished for it. If it is proved that it was in self-defense, you won't be punished. So killing is illegal, it is forbidden. But change the context. Self-defense, then that is not illegal. So one rule, killing is illegal, that can't be applied in both the situations. Both are different situations. So don't try to use this as a mathematical formula. It does not apply in every situation. My favorite dialogue is, law depends on facts and circumstances of the case. Don't you think so? It depends on the facts and circumstances of the case. It means that you cannot apply the principles, the rules to all the situations alike. We also have to consider the facts, the circumstances, etc. So these are just guidelines. The provisions do not apply automatically to each and every case. So you will not come running to the General Clauses Act. First, try to find the solution in your respective act. If it fails, then we are always there. Everything depends on facts and circumstances of the case. The words and provisions used in the General Clauses Act have to be read and understood in the context of the act to which it applies. Again, it's a repetition. You have to consider the situation, you have to consider the context, you have to consider the act which you are studying. The meaning and interpretation of that general definition will depend on whichever act you are referring. The state will have to follow the State General Clauses Act, and they also have to confer to the General Clauses Act. It simply says that state, you not only have to follow the state general clauses, but also the central. You can't say, no, central I'm not going to follow. My state act says something else, I will follow that. No, everything must come in conformity. Everything must be done in harmony. So the state will also have to follow the central general clauses. They have to follow two, state as well as central. Okay. So that is the application. Quickly write this. Done. Let's discuss this from the textbook. Okay, now let's read it from the textbook. The General Clauses Act 1897. The General Clauses Act was enacted on 11th March 1897 to consolidate and to extend the General Clauses Act 1868 and 1887. You will find that we have covered everything in those handwritten notes. Why am I still reading it? Just to give you confidence that the handwritten notes are sufficient. And also, we should be in a position to read the print so that we can learn it. But I'm sure after reading those handwritten notes, this will become very easy. The General Clauses Act, it contains what? Definition of what? Words and some general principles of interpretation. Interpretation means how to read and understand the act. What is the meaning of interpretation? How to read and understand the act. So the General Clauses Act, it contains certain definitions and words and also the principles of interpretation. This act provides general definition. Specific will be given in the respective act. General words are defined here, which are applicable to all the central acts and regulations where there is no definition in those acts. It is very effective in absence of a clear definition in specific enactment. Enactments means act. So if the definition is not given in the act which you are studying, then go and refer the General Clauses Act. If there is a conflict between the pre and post constitutional laws, now in India, the constitution was made, our Indian constitution, yes? Our Indian constitution was made on 26th January 1950. So the laws before 26 January 1950, they are known as the pre-constitutional laws, and the laws which are after 26 January, they are the post-constitutional laws. We are going to study all that in detail later. The General Clauses Act has also been enacted to shorten the language of law, to avoid repetition of the words in the same piece of legislation, like for example, director. If I keep defining the word director again and again, whenever it is used in the Companies Act, it will be very irritating and very bulky. So define them at one place, okay? How does it shorten the language of law? The same example is given here. If the court has the power to appoint, suspend, or remove, law says why write suspend and remove. If you have the power to appoint, it is understood you also have the power to appoint, to suspend and remove. So shorten the language of law. What is the object, purpose, and importance? Object is, you keep on highlighting along with me, to shorten the language of act, to provide for uniformity of expression in the Central Act by giving the definition of the terms in common use. Okay, so we are trying to bring about uniformity. Each and every reader of various act will give the same meaning to that. You will attach the same meaning to that word. It states explicitly certain convenient rules for construction and interpretation. So we are not only going to study the definition. See, we are not only going to study the definition, but we are also going to study certain rules which will help us to see. These are general rules of construction, general rules to understand the concept. We are going to study that also. So it provides general rule of interpretation. It guards against slips and oversight. Like sometimes, the act does not explain the word clearly. So here you will get better clarification. That is what they are aiming for. The purpose is to place in one single statute different provisions. It has been called the law of all laws. The purpose itself enshrines, that is, preserves the importance. The purpose of the act itself makes it so important. No? The General Clauses Act, or for that matter, even the Interpretation Act of any other country, it codifies the rules of statutory interpretation. Statutory means interpretation of law. Okay, statutory, it means it is made by the government. The so-called rules of interpretation, they are really in the nature of guidelines. I'm telling you, it is a guideline. It is not some mathematical formula. You also have to read the context. The facts and circumstances of the case are more important. It does not apply same automatically to each and every case, and it will not apply to every case in the same manner. The facts and circumstances of the case will determine how these words are to be interpreted. Whatever it says, whether the meaning, it has to be read to it, okay? Read into which the act applies, it means context of the act. Read it into the context. Now, they are very clear. Definitions in the TGCA, they will apply only where the context does not provide otherwise. It means if your act does not provide any meaning, only then you will refer the general clauses. And otherwise, no, it's not required to come here if you are satisfied in the respective act itself. Hence, there is a difference in the applicability of each section with regards to the context of the act that you're referring. So, even though the word commencement has been defined over here, if you consider the context of your respective act, the interpretation may change. Somebody else may interpret that word differently depending on the context. So, slight variation will again apply. It's not like maths, it will apply to every person and every act in the same manner. You also have to consider the context. So, slight deviation here. You just have to take the main essence from the General Clauses Act and add the facts and circumstances and then understand the meaning in that context. Every state will also have its own General Clauses Act. So the state will have to follow the state as well as the central, which we are studying. We are studying the central General Clauses Act. The state General Clauses Act should also conform to the General Clauses Act. Some basic understanding of legislation. This I will start in the next chapter. My intention was just to give you a basic introduction in today's session. In my next session, I will start with you some basic understanding of the legislature. I have divided the chapter into different parts. So we will do the basic understanding and then we will cover the definition separately. So we are going to discuss in small parts. I will not make very lengthy lectures so that your interest is maintained. Chapter is very important. Please read the chapter after every session, after every lecture of mine. Just go through the text once and I'm sure you will be able to remember this till your exam. All right, students, keep studying. Don't compromise on effort and quality. Make your own notes. Make your notes along with me. In case you miss out on any part, you can always rewind and copy it in your notebook. Don't take a photograph in your mobile. It will remain in your mobile only. Try to write all this in your notebook with me. Okay, so with this I end today's session, and my next session I will begin the basic understanding of legislature. I will see you there.